Super, good to see everyone this evening. I hope you're well and I hope you're warm enough for the practice. We won't be holding positions for too long. We will be working quite dynamically tonight using Hatha yoga postures, and we're going to start in a seated position, Sukhasana. Now, throughout the weeks, we've been exploring the niyamas, the observances, and we've moved through all of those now, and I'm really looking at a sense of integration for this session tonight. So as we come into a seated position, use a prop, so a block or a meditation cushion, to pop your sit bones onto, just to give the pelvis a little bit of height. And as you draw your legs into a cross-legged position, we have Sukhasana, but we've also explored Siddhyonasana recently, otherwise known as Siddhasana, adept pose. So let's see how it feels to bring the heel into the perineum, or the space around the perineum, and the other heel stacked on top around the front of the pubic bone, the pubic symphysis area around the front of the pelvis here. Allowing for the knees to drop away from the hip points. If you find that this moves into your spine, if your knees are up here and you feel scrunched, you might want to bring some height underneath the sit bones. So coming into a seated position that feels comfortable for you. Now, as we arrive physically and mentally, making sure that you feel comfortable, you might like to swap the legs over into the opposite swap of the legs. As we often move into that which is more conditioned, the habitual sort of swapping of the legs or bringing one leg on top of the other, let's take it the other way around and just notice the effect that has on the hips and the knees. Drawing your attention into the body, into the torso now, close the eyes if that feels comfortable, or gently gaze in front of you on the mat. Thinking about this lovely long length moving up from the crown of the head, all the way down to the tailbone, so the sit bones are grounded. So you begin to cultivate a sense of spaciousness within as the shoulders drop away from the ears and the jaw relaxes. And just notice how you feel for a moment before we begin to start this practice. Hopefully there'll be a palpable difference from the beginning of the session to the end of the session. Beginning to cultivate our nostril breathing, breathing into the depths of the belly. As you inhale, allow for the belly to expand. Really allow for the muscles to relax. Now, if you're in your third trimester, you'll be sensing that sense of belly breath anyway. So allowing for, on the exhalation, a sense of slight drawing inwards, very gentle here. Inhaling, feeling that expansion within. Exhaling, allowing for a sense of settling as the diaphragm moves upwards into the cavity of the rib cage. Breathing here. Now we're going to bring some movement into this. So as we exhale, we're going to round the spine and allow for the pelvis to roll onto the back of the tailbone, gently dropping through the forehead. We're going to inhale and roll onto the front of the pelvis, coming into a spinal extension, but keeping the chin tucked in. Exhaling, rolling into a bit of a cat-cow here. Inhaling, drawing the breastbone forwards. We're going to take some circles now, spiraling through from the base of the spine to the upper reaches of the crown of the head. Feeling into all of the movement or the space available as we scoop the breastbone forwards and then draw ourselves into a flexion. Now, as we bring the breastbone forwards to the front, we're going to take it back, exhaling to roll on the back of the pelvis, inhaling to roll to the front. Now, take your Ujjayi breath, that sense of ocean breath, as we tighten around the glottis muscles within the throat. Drawing ourselves through and upright. We're going to drop now the left ear to left shoulder, opening up the sternomastoid, bringing the palms of the hands to rest upwards towards the ceiling. Now the gaze comes up towards the ceiling. Now we can take some weight into the side of the head, bringing the hand to the side of the face, gazing into the corner of the eye socket, acknowledging how the nervous system feels to you. So we're looking at the autonomic nervous system here, noticing whether we are dropping into the parasympathetic, that state of rest and digest, moving away from fight or flight. Now, for some of us, we may want to take this deeper by bringing the hand into the rib cage, taking a lateral extension movement and pulling through the side. And indeed, if you're pregnant, this may want to be a very gentle movement. Gazing up at the corner of the eye socket, noticing if you're salivating, or indeed if you've got a dry mouth. Breathing into the depths of the belly. We're going to release the hand, move the gaze to the center, and release the side of the head, rolling the chin forwards. Feel into the outer back region of the neck, dropping the right ear to right shoulder. Would you like to take it further by bringing the weight of the hand onto the side of the head, gazing up to the left corner of the eye socket? Noticing how you feel. What is the quality of sensation that arises here before bringing the left hand into the side of the ribcage, if that feels suitable for you to do so. So we're always checking in with ourselves here. How does this feel? What's taking place? Is there any transitional sense of moving into a state of rest and digest? So we're looking for replenishment within our practice. Gazing up at the left corner of the eye socket. Breathing here. Releasing the hand from the side of the head, bring the gaze to the center, and drawing ourselves into an upright position. We're going to take the left leg out to the side now, coming into a lateral extension movement, flaring the feet so the foot is fully engaged. So often we kind of forget about our feet and the extremities. We're going to stroke the left hand alongside the inside seam now. Gaze follows up towards the ceiling as we bring the arm over into a C shape. Breathing now into the seam, the side seam on the right side here. So we've got this lateral extension with a little bit of rotation as we drop through the shoulder and gaze up towards the ceiling. So the drishti follows, if that feels suitable in your neck. Now we're going to explore how it feels to bring the back of the hand to the back of the pelvis. Does that open up the sternomastoid and shoulder area more freely? Breathing into this space and exploring again, is there more space to move into this? Can the hand drop over towards the foot before we take the arm up towards the ceiling and almost pull ourselves, imagining ropes are dangling from the ceiling, if only, pulling ourselves into an upright position. And we're now going to take the left side in, right side out, flaring the foot here. Find your sit bones, stroking the back of the hand alongside the inside seam of the leg. And the gaze follows up towards the ceiling as we rise the arm overhead. How does that feel to move the arms into a C shape? And then what changes take place as you bring the back of the hand to meet the tailbone? How does the neck feel? Are you breathing or are you holding your breath? And then as we bring the arm over, is there more space to elongate here? And then bringing that hand up towards the ceiling. Imagine that you're reaching for a rope and lifting yourself up, coming up into an easy position on your sit bones. We're going to move onto our all fours now. So removing any support, and I've got these bricks, I'm going to put them aside. Don't need those quite yet. So we're going to come into an all fours position. You might like to take your socks off now, if that feels suitable for you to do so. So observing the position of the hands are really integral, especially when we move into side plank. So if you can spread those fingers as wide as possible, we're engaging the hands so you arch through the palms. To wake up the muscles and those areas that get so tight with RSI, we're going to spiral the fingers to the outer reaches of the mat and rock to and fro, feeling into the muscles around the wrist. Now, if we engage the hands, this is called a Hasta Bandha, we're going to take the pressure off the wrist. This is really crucial to our practice. We're then going to spiral the fingers to the inside seam, rocking to and fro. And then spiral them all the way in towards the knees. Now, obviously, depending on your body, it might be the case that you need to take the pressure out of the wrists here, in which case you can bring the hands alongside the knees. If you're hypermobile, be very cautious because those senses will not be kicking in. Sensory feedback won't be kicking in. So just be cautious here. Again, we're opening up the muscles. They get really tight with smartphone usage, etc. We're then going to flip the hands upside down, spread through the thumb and the little finger, opening up the upper or the top reaches of the hands, feeling into that space. And as we flip the hands back into their neutral position, can you spread those fingers more freely? Can you press the fingers down into the ground and feel the arching of the palm? This is really crucial to our practice. Now, taking your attention up the elbows and the shoulders, acknowledge what position you're in when you're in your all fours. Are you yielding? Some of us come into a collapse, which looks like this, where we sort of dump into the lumbar. Some of us are bracers and we press ourselves into the ground. So we're looking for somewhere in between, again, cultivating the space from the crown of the head to the tailbone. Now we're going to drop the forehead and come into your flexion or scared cat, tucking the tailbone under, feeling into the shoulder blades moving apart. As we inhale, we're going to come into a neutral. Exhale, draw the breastbone forwards, keep the chin tucked in so the gaze follows. Inhaling, neutral, exhaling. Allow for this wave of movement to undulate up through the spine. Inhaling with your own breath here. Exhale, coming into your spinal extension. Inhaling through neutral. Exhale into your flexion movement. Lovely. Now, with a sense of your flexion movement, we're going to take our hands out in front of us slightly and take some circles through the hips. So we allow for the hips to drop and come over to the right side, scooping the hips back, making some lovely circles, utilizing the hasta bandha, the hand lock, in order to support the wrists. For years and years, I wondered what was going on with my wrists because they seemed so weak. And actually what was taking place was the hands weren't really energetically involved in the movements and the arm balances that I was in. So these are really important pointers. Breathing the hips back, and we're going to take our scooping spirals in the opposite direction. Now, if you need to bring the hands forward slightly, by all means, feel free to do so. So it feels like as you drop the hips, you've got that space for your upward facing dog. Taking those circles. Now, if this feels suitable for you, you can take a figure of 8. So you cross the hips over the midline, scoop them forwards, and take the hips back to scoop back. Really take a full body movement here. See if you can drop the movement of the head into it. And then take it back in the opposite direction. Lovely figure of 8 movement. It's all about breath and flow here. Finding those regions that maybe might get a little bit neglected as we come back through the center and take our tabletop. So bring the hands back in towards the center. We're going to scoop the left knee in towards the midline and take some circles into the hips here now. Embracing that open foot position, dorsiflexion, breathing down into the footprint. 3, moving into one side. Acknowledge whether you're lolling over to one hand or one side and come back in the opposite direction. Now, the slower the better in terms of this movement. Can you create circles with the knee? Were there areas within the hips that are juddery or clicky or stiff? And then bring the knee down to come to the other side. Realign yourself before you take the knee in. Taking circles, feeling into the foot, engaging all the way through the leg. So there's no area or region of your body that's switched off. Everything is awake and the energy is moving freely from foot to finger to crown of the head. Taking those spirals. And we're going to take now the leg out behind us into a half plank. So I've got the chair in the way slightly. Opening up the hamstrings here, we're going to draw, if the space where you are, the leg out to the side. So you've got a straightened leg coming out to the side of the body. So I'm going to swivel so you can see what I'm doing. So the leg is out to the side and the full footprint makes its way, you ground through the foot. So we're going to take the weight back and take the weight forwards. Feeling into the inner groin here. Now from this position, make sure you feel stable. We're going to move up into an upright position, a gate pose. Now, there are two ways in here. We're either going to use Kali Mudra, where we bring our hands into a steeple position with the four fingers, reaching up towards the ceiling, or we're going to come in through the traditional manner with a C shape. So you'll notice that if you use your Kali Mudra, directing your energy up towards the ceiling, release the shoulders if you can. We're going to take that movement over to the side. The gaze follows, breathing into navel here. Now there's a little bit more intensity, tapas taking place when you move into gates from this position. I'm just going to change the angle of my screen so you can see the arm position. Utilize your Ujjayi breath here. It becomes quite intense. Breathing down into that Manipura area, the area of the will. Releasing through the shoulders. Lovely, long, deep, powerful breaths here. And we're going to bring that back up. Take the hands back down and bring the leg back in. So we're coming to the other side now. So left leg extends out into your half plank. How does that feel down through the heel and the hamstrings? And then we draw a quarter circle all the way round as we bring the straightened leg out to the side. We take the hands forwards, move into that forward position and moving back into almost a half puppy or a child's pose. Feeling into the inner groin, take yourself back into that neutral position, find your ground, lift up through the body, take your mudra, your Kali Mudra, directing that energy up through the crown of the head, burning through obstacles here, and then feel into that tilt over through the lateral seam. I'm going to move myself around so I can see you. So you've got the position with the Kali Mudra. Depending on your energy today, you can always soften over to the side and the gaze follows up towards the ceiling. Breathing here, the breath becomes really crucial. If you've eaten recently, you might find yourself burping. Direct that energy up through Sahasrara, crown chakra. Breathing here. As you take yourself back upright, release Kali Mudra. Bring the hands back through center and draw that knee in so you're back in your tabletop. So we're going to take our legs out into an extended child's pose and bring ourselves into that. Now just notice if this feels comfortable for you. If you need to use a bolster, by all means use a bolster in front of the head. Some of us may be able to bring the forehead down to the ground, extended child's pose, opening up the armpits, the serratus anterior. We're going to creep the hands like little crabs over to the left side, stacking right hand on top of left hand. Breathing along that right side seam of the body. Breathing here. As you inhale, there'll be a sense of expansion within. As you exhale, there'll be a sense of settling. We're going to creep the hands through the midline and then the hands transfer over to the right side. Left hand stacks on top of the right hand to feel into the lateral seam of the left side. Breathing here. Feeling that expansion within and taking the hands back through center, feeling into that sense before we crawl forwards into a puppy pose. So what happens here is the hips lift up towards the ceiling. The bottom is in sort of a line from the knees. So we've got a right angle taking place and we sink down through the chest, feeling into puppy. Breathing here. And then creeping the hands back into your tabletop. Find yourself here. Bring the knees in slightly. Right hand comes in front of the gaze. Inhale, left hand up towards the ceiling. Exhale, thread the needle. Take the hand as far through as you need to, finding some rotation into the upper chest. Inhale, reaching up towards the ceiling. Exhale and follow through. Inhale, bring that left hand back to the center. We're going to come to the other side. Inhaling, right arm comes up towards the ceiling. Thread the needle through, finding that rotation into the shoulder girdle. Inhale and exhale, folding through here. Inhale, find that center position as you come back into your tabletop. We're going to try supported side angle first. So we're going to swivel the right leg out to the side. The left leg comes into a straight line, bringing the arms up towards the ceiling. We're stacking the shoulder blades here, feeling into a supported side plank position. Okay, and this may be very helpful for you as we work into Vashisthana. Let's explore lifting up through the hand and reaching up back into that gate pose, Parigasana, as we follow the arm over. We're going to flow ourselves back through supported side plank gaze follows, and take the hand back to reach, swiveling the foot in and bringing the other side in. So we're going to come to the other side now. So taking the leg out and swiveling the foot behind the buttock, hand is in line with knee and foot is flat against the floor. Gaze follows up towards the ceiling as the shoulders stack, supported side plank, and then lifting up through the arms here. We're going to flow the arm over into that lovely C shape and then take ourselves back. Don't rush this, feel into all of the movements. Gaze comes up towards the ceiling and then bring the legs back in, back into your tabletop. Now the next stage is fully optional. We're going to try Vashisthana, our side plank. So you can come into that with a support or indeed try the full option. So taking the legs out to the back side here, bringing the toes together as though they're bound together. Plank pose. When you're in your plank, remember to breathe. The fingers are spread out as wide as possible into your Hasta Bandha. We take the right hand in front of the gaze and we're rolling onto the side of the foot. So you come into a Tadasana. So you're very much a staff or a stick sort of position, bringing the arm up towards the ceiling, feeling into the hands, your Hasta Bandha, your 2 points of contact through one hand and the side of the foot. Feeling into Vashisthana, if you're secure, you can lift up through one leg if that's suitable for you, or you can bring the foot forwards. It's really optional. You can modify according to your needs. Breathing here. Find a position that works for you. With a sense of control, we're going to bring that right, or rather left hand down and roll into our plank. Option to come into child's pose. Settling the hips back. Finding your sense of replenishment here. I'm going to swivel so you can see what's going on. Take a moment to restore yourself and come back to the healing breath, the belly breath. Now we're going to bring ourselves back into our tabletop, finding our Hasta Bandha. We're going to take the legs out behind us, bringing the big toes together, plank pose, and then bringing the left hand in front of the gaze. We roll over into Vashisthana. Indeed, supported side plank is always an option. Coming into that staff-like shape, how does it feel to lift up through one leg? How does it feel to bring one foot forwards? How does it feel to come into the supported version of this? And release down and out when you're ready. Bringing the knees back in, coming into your tabletop and taking a child's pose if that feels suitable. We're going to try bird dog now. So coming back into alignment with the hands and the spine, particularly if you have extra weight around the belly, just notice what's taking place within the lumbar region. And while we come into bird dog, think about the tailbone drawing down towards the ground. We're going to lift the right hand, left leg off the ground to expand outwardly. Coming into bird dog, breathing that gaze down in front of us, adjusting the pelvis as and when we need to. We're going to exhale the limbs towards one another in a little contraction flexion movement, and inhale, extend ourselves out to the outer reaches of the mat. Exhaling, coming into the breath 3 times. Inhale to release, to reach and release. Exhaling to contract. Inhale to direct your energy outwards. We're going to take the hands and the knee back to the ground rather, and then extend through left hand, right knee. Inhaling here, gaze down at the mat to lengthen the neck. Exhale, drawing the limbs inwards. Inhale, extend, expand, lengthen through middle finger, base of big toe. Exhale, drawing yourself inwards. Inhale, reaching. Notice how each element of the body feels here, the shoulders, the hip points, the knees, the hands. Spread through those fingers nice and wide. And draw the hands back down. Take a child's pose if necessary. Now, as we draw ourselves back into a supported side angle, we're going to explore a slightly different movement. So swiveling the left leg out to the back, the right leg out to the side, the hand in line, come into that side angle, supported side angle. Now, from this position, we're going to explore Ardha Chandrasana, but from the ground. So we're going to inhale, moving that leg up into a parallel position off the ground. Dorsiflexion of the foot, so the foot is alive, awake and well. How does that feel? And then we're going to let the foot come down in a controlled fashion. Inhale, feeling into that movement. Is there more space available than there was before? Exhale, the foot comes down to the floor. Inhaling here. And exhaling. Now, as you bend the knee here, you might want to bring the hand to the foot. How does that feel along the quad, the front of the hip flexor? Just exploring how that feels before you release the foot back down. So we're going to take those limbs back in, coming back to that starting position, tabletop. Coming to the other side, swiveling the leg out to the side, coming into your supported Vashisthana. Find that Hasta Bandha and inhale the leg off the ground. This is where I've always got something in the way. Move that away. Exhale, dropping the foot. Inhale, feel into this action. Is there more space available for you than there was the first time? With a sense of control and ease, that's Sthira and Sukham, stability and ease, spoken about within the Yoga Sutras. Now, as we drop the foot down, we're going to bend the knee and notice how it feels to lengthen through the quads, the iliopsoas, front of the hip flexors. And then we're going to release and bring that foot back before we swivel ourselves back into our tabletop. Now, this time we're going to tuck the toes under and come into our downward dog. There is an option if downward dog feels too much, especially if you're in your third trimester, to use some height. So you can get hold of a sofa or a chair and come into your downward dog from a slightly different position. This is also the same thing. So we're either coming into downward dog from the toes, from the ground, with the hands about 30 degrees or so to the outer edges of the mat. And extend the hindquarters up towards the ceiling. A lovely downward dog of your choosing in this position, releasing through the shoulders and the head. Can you look under the left and the right armpits? Believe it or not, I'm getting hot, so I'm going to take my jumper off. Can you allow for the head to fully relax here? This is really crucial to our practice. We're going to take the weight out of the right side now and extend into three-legged dog. How does that feel? And then draw the knee up towards the ceiling, dropping the foot behind the buttock. Gaze follows under the right armpit. Scorpion. Now you can feel the sense of the hip flying here, which is very different to our three-legged dog. So bring yourself back through three-legged dog. Allow for the pelvis to stabilize and square. And then we're going to draw the knee in towards the face to take our high lunge. So can you come into high lunge? You can use the hand around the ankle to really feel into directing the energy down through the heel, opening up the hamstrings and the front of the iliopsoas at the front of the hip point. So your high lunge position, dropping the back knee and flattening the top of the foot, coming into a low lunge. Now, if your knee is tweaky here, I really recommend some support under the knee, and that can really help in terms of not creating any crankiness there. Now, with that tension at the front foot, can you spread the toes nice and wide? We're going to draw the arms up into Anjaneyasana, allowing for a little bit of a spinal extension, but just be cautious around the lumbar. If you've got anything going on with the lumbar, draw that tailbone down, and that will take the pressure out of the lower back, moving into a sense of softness around the shoulder blades. And imagine that someone's bringing a hand in between the shoulder blades here, and you're resting, opening up and then bringing the hands back down towards the feet. We're going to wiggle that right foot out into lizard. So the foot comes onto the outside edges. You might want to use some bricks and blocks. If you've got them handy, you can bring those bricks and blocks to the inside of the foot, and then allow, if the knee, if the hip point and the external rotation is available, the knee might want to hinge out to the side, just feeling into the softness available there. Breathing into your lizard, taking the knee back in, remove those bricks, remove those blocks, swivel the foot so it comes back in between the framing of the hands, and draw the knee off the ground. We're going to take ourselves back into our downward dog, and three-legged dog, the left leg up towards the ceiling, drawing the knee into a bend, taking the knee up towards that ceiling gaze, follows under left armpit scorpion. Feeling into the flying of the hips here before we transition back into a high lunge. So you take the knee in towards the nose, use the hand to come back into that high lunge position, feeling into that space, and dropping the back knee, flattening back foot, low lunge. Can you find some stability here as you allow for the iliaceres to lengthen through the front of the hip point? We open the arms up towards the ceiling. The shoulders feel tense or tight here. Open the hands out, so you're holding almost a Pilates ball. Relaxing through the shoulders, imagining someone's got their hand in between the shoulder blades. Resting here with softness through the face. We're going to take the hands back to the front here now, and the hands can come into the midline as the foot wiggles out to the side of the mat. If you're using bricks, do bring them in front. It gives us more space to work with as you rest into your lizard. Now, depending on your body, maybe there's some external rotation available as you drop the knee out to the side, rolling onto the side of the foot. Don't feel like you need to force anything. Just allow for whatever space that is available to be explored. Breathing here. As you draw that knee back in through the midline, we're going to take the bricks out and away. Wiggle that foot in and take ourselves into a high lunge. We're going to transition to the front of the mat now. So you can take some space between the feet. There's no need for the feet to be in Samastiti, right next to each other. Take the feet together, coming into Uttanasana. Now, I have a chair in the way. If you're working with Uttanasana, because say your bump is big, create some space in between the legs, or use a chair or the support of a sofa or support of bricks to come into a half flat back Uttanasana, feeling into the hamstrings, expand the toes nice and wide. Breathing here, dropping through the crown of the head, dangling through the upper body. We're going to take our elbows, bend the knees, and ragdoll into Tadasana. And of course, the last thing to come up into Tadasana will be the head. So I'm going to adjust screen again as we come into that standing position, Tadasana at the front of the mat. Find your standing position, feeling into the footprint here. We're going to step back into our Virabhadrasana 1. So this position, the hip points are directed forwards like headlamps. You can have the heel off the ground or the heel swiveled inwards. Virabhadrasana 1, find your base of support and reach up through the arms. So there's lovely long length moving up through the crown of the head. The hands are engaged. Your Hasta Bandha here is engaged. So we're in our Virabhadrasana 1. Now from this position, we're going to swivel ourselves slightly to make a Trikonasana. So we're going to bring the hands out to the sides. Now in Trikonasana, often the knee isn't bent, but actually anatomically it can be helpful. So we've got one foot pointing in one direction. The other foot is in a position, so you're in a sort of Virabhadrasana 2 position. And we're thinking about taking the hip out to the side. Now, in terms of support, if you've got those bricks and blocks, you can bring them in front of the front foot. You don't have to use them, of course. Now we're going to take the length through the side body. As we come into Trikonasana, you can bend that knee, especially if you're hypermobile. Now, what we're doing in this position is we're really feeling into the lateral extension movement. And the temptation is to dump weight into the hand. What we're really wanting to do is to take the weight in through the sideline, reaching up through the hand, feeling into Trikonasana, the space that's available as we stack the shoulder blades on top of one another, and the gaze moves up towards the ceiling, if that's suitable. So neck is twingy, just bring the gaze in front. Breathing here, lengthening up through the crown of the head. And on the next inhalation, we're going to take the torso into an upright position and swivel through the feet. So we're going to swap the position now to the other side. If you're using your bricks, bring them to the inside seam of the foot. Acknowledge the back leg, so it's at an angle, and the front leg, as it were, is directing up. So we're going to hinge, bending that knee, hinging through the hips, stacking the hips, a bit like scorpion, and the arms come into that position where the arm is directed up towards the ceiling, and the lower arm is directing down towards the foot. And just notice whether you're taking the weight into that lower arm. Can you bring the shoulder blades to stack on top of one another? Will the gaze move up towards the sky, or do you need to bring the gaze in through the midline, as it were, into that forwards position? Can you open up around the shoulders here and utilize the breath? Feeling that length from the crown of the head to the tailbone. And you've got a sense now what it might feel like to move into Ardha Chandrasana, half moon. As we inhale, we're going to reach, taking the arms, and we're going to step forwards on the mat. Now, in terms of our alignment now, I want you to think about whether when you move into Ardha Chandrasana, you want the height of a chair or the height of the bricks, or indeed you can go without any of those and go full sort of kamikaze, like you're outdoors and you've got nothing to support you. So feeling into that sense of the Trikonasana, find your balance through the feet. Engage the feet, peel the toes off the ground. If you can engage the feet so you're fully grounded, that will make all the difference. Taking your awareness and attention and breath down into the navel, it will help you with your balance. Now we're going to come into our Ardha Chandrasana. I'll just demonstrate for a moment. You're moving into a hinging movement. And what's happening, I've actually got the sort of angle of the bricks wrong. We're going to open the heart space out to the side. Now the gaze will start on the floor. And if you find your balance, I'm flaring my foot here, engaging a dorsiflexion, you can bring the gaze through center. Ardha Chandrasana. Use the support that you need for your balance here. Your ankle is doing quite a lot of work. My foot always wants to move into a slight angle. That's fine. Your foot doesn't need to be like stuck in concrete for this position. And then as you bend the knee, you come out. Okay, so it will be slightly different depending on what you're using for support. If you've got a sofa near you, use a sofa, but you'll be sort of facing that sofa as you bring your hand to meet that chair and taking that action as you move the leg off the ground. And the gaze either comes to the side, of course you can gaze to the ground, and you're engaging your feet, you're engaging the foot off the ground here. Breathing as you stack the shoulder blades on top of one another. Maybe you can engage the leg even more before you bring yourself up and out. Give yourself a moment to come back to. We're going to come to the other side. So I'm going to swap my props over. It doesn't matter where you are necessarily. Some of you, I can see your legs moving into Ardha Chandrasana. So we're going to come to the other side. So the right leg now is taking the weight. Now we take the weight into that leg, finding that sense of ground through the toes. And by all means, if you're feeling wobbly today, you know, acknowledge that and notice it without a sense of judgment. Okay? Sometimes these asana are challenging, and that's why we do them. Engaging the foot, bringing the gaze to in front of you. Allow for the wobbles to take place. Harness your breath and use the support that you need. Another way in is that you can move against a wall. Engaging the side seam of the hips and the lateral movement can really help with Ardha Chandrasana as you lift the leg higher than you think you need to. But most of all, practice self-compassion and non-judgment. Moving in and out of Ardha Chandrasana, feeling into the space available within. And if you came into two versions of this on the other side, please come into another one. These little explorations are really great for our balance. They're great for our ankle strength. But it's also good for our sense of strength, of will, of determination to keep trying. Now, I find with this asana, sometimes it feels really easy to move into. Sometimes it's just really difficult. It depends on where your head is at. It depends on your energy levels at any given moment. So we're going to come into our center and explore another balance, okay? So this is a Supta Padangusthasana movement, but it's Utthita Hasta Supta Padangusthasana. You take the supta away. So we're going to bring the knee in towards the chest. Can you get hold of the big toe with the forefinger and the middle finger? And we're going to explore the length of the hamstrings as we extend the foot out in front of us. Can you keep the pelvis square? That's our first sort of action. Now, if you find your balance here, you might want to take the leg out to the side and gaze over left. Either bring hand to hip point or hand out to the side of the body. Apologies that I'm crownless in the image here. And then can you bring yourself back through the midline, bending the knee with that sense of single pointed, one pointedness. So we're going to come to the other side. Can you bring the knee in towards the chest? That's your first sort of action. The next place to move to is the forefinger and the middle finger. And then we explore how it feels to extend the leg out. This will involve a lot of work with the hamstrings, but just acknowledge the fact that our anatomy is variable. So if you have a shorter arm to femur length, this is going to be tricky, isn't it? And if we're longer in the torso and shorter in the arm, it's also going to be tricky. So just acknowledge that it doesn't need to be about the knee being bent. If you find your balance, you can bring yourself into the external rotation balance here, gazing over towards the hand. Bring it back to the breath, always. Ujjayi breath here with a sense of control, drawing that leg in through the midline, bending the knee, and bring the foot back down into your standing pose. We're going to take goddess now. So bring the legs wide. Make sure you've got enough space. We're going to take the feet out into an external movement. You want to make sure the knees are directing in line with the toes. And if you're finding the knees are winging in, the internal or the external rotation isn't as large as the set of your feet, you want to bring the feet in, okay? This is really crucial to support your knees. So as we sink down into goddess, I'd like you to engage your Mula Bandha, your pelvic diaphragm, goddess pose. We're going to track the tailbone down and engage the Mula Bandha. Can you feel that energy within? We're going to take the arms up and overhead, lengthening through the legs here. Gaze follows on an inhalation. Exhale, draw the hands down. Acknowledge your Mula Bandha. Tuck the tailbone under. Inhale, reach. Exhale, maybe there's more space to sink as you draw the tailbone down. Inhale, now option for you to come into Samasana, lion's breath, as you bring the arms into cactus and stick the tongue out, extending through the exhalation. Find your Mula Bandha. Before you inhale, try that one more time, as long as you don't have a sore throat. Mula Bandha. Release the hands. And we're going to sink down into a pistol squat now. So as you explore this, remember that there is movement, okay? Your feet are not in concrete. Your hips are not in concrete either. So as we swing ourselves over, can you bend the knee and allow for that movement to take place? And remember, your feet are not in concrete. And then we're going to take you over to the other side, feeling into that space available. Before we take the sit bones down into Janusarasana. So when you're coming down onto your sit bones, you might want to bring some support underneath the buttocks. Janusarasana. One leg is moving into external rotation, the other leg out in front. Spread through the toes, engage the foot. The position of the leg can be either all the way in or out slightly, it doesn't matter too much. And as you pivot forwards on the pelvis, just allow for yourself to settle. If you've got a bolster, you might want to use that bolster to rest the forehead into that space. Coming into a restorative Janusarasana. It might be the case that you want to have the bolster over the leg to settle the arms on top of. But as you breathe here, just allow for that space to become available in the back line of the legs. As the fascia slides and releases, can you allow for the torso to hinge over that leg? Breathing here. Now, if we take our Janusarasana back a little bit, we can find our Maha Mudra. So when we come into that, we're thinking about a lovely long spine engagement of the foot. We're going to engage the Mula Bandha. Can you find the Mula Bandha and engage Uddiyana Bandha, tucking the chin in towards the breastbone, sort of opening the rib cage up towards the chin, thereby lengthening the back of the neck. If you're not pregnant, you can work with your Uddiyana Bandha, exhaling all the way to the end of the exhalation, allowing for the rib cage to expand, lifting up the diaphragm up into that area, the flying up action. And then when you absolutely have to inhale, you let that go. So you've got the free bandha. If you're in pregnancy, I would recommend just completely ignoring the abdominal bandha lock and working with the pelvic diaphragm and Jaladhara bandha. Feeling into that lovely length up through the crown of the head down to the tailbone and the perineum. And then release and bring yourself into an upright position. Bring that knee in towards the midline, straightening that leg out, coming to the other side. Placing the foot wherever it needs to come to. And you can use some support with the knee, if that feels suitable. And we're coming into that forward fold. So the angle here is about 30 degrees over to the pinky toe, believe it or not. And as you come into that position, maybe you want to use your bolster over the leg and place the forehead into the bolster space here. And you can explore draping the spine over the leg if that feels suitable firstly. But I want you to take it back now. So you've got that lovely long length from tailbone, perineum, all the way up to the crown of the head. Shoulders rest away from the ears. Engaging your Mula Bandha, your pelvic lock, pelvic diaphragm, drawing up. Jaladhara bandha, tucking the chin in towards the breastbone, length of the back of the head. So you're almost drawing the back of the head in line with the spine. And that lifts you slightly, but that's what we're looking for. The gaze moves down towards the shin or the knee. Maha Mudra. And then as we release that engagement, we draw ourselves up and out. We can straighten through the leg and shake the legs out. So we're going to come into a brief inversion. If you want to come into shoulder stand, because we've been practicing that, remember that we use the blanket under the shoulders and the head releases off the blanket. If you're pregnancy, I wouldn't recommend shoulder stand. In third trimester, I personally found that I didn't want to rest on my spine because it felt too much. So you might want to take a side lying position with a bolster if you have one, or you can come into Vipariti Karini if that feels, again, comfortable, which looks like this. But if you've got your bolster, I recommend coming into a side lying position at the bolster. Now, it really depends on the size of your bump, but when we come into that restorative position, we're looking at a rotation as we bring the gaze to the other side. That's one option. The other option is to come into Nadi Shodhana in a seated meditation position. So I'm giving you quite a lot of positions there. For those of you who want to go into a shoulder stand, please go into a shoulder stand. If you want to come into your waterfall or your Vipariti Karini, by all means, please do so. And it looks like you're happy to be on your back, in which case you can come into an inversion of your choice. Looks like you're in a Vipariti Karini with a strap, so that's fantastic. If you're comfortable there, work with where you feel the benefit. And for those of you in your shoulder stand, just remember to wrap your elbows in towards one another, protecting the back of the pelvis with the hands. Releasing any effort with breath. And it's often these inversions, these restorative positions that we move into that help with the integration of our practice. When we think about the niyamas, sauka meaning cleanliness or unclutteredness of thoughts, santosha meaning contentment, tapas meaning discipline, heat, ardha, svadhyaya meaning our self-study, the study of the scriptures, and ishvara pranidhana meaning devotion. You can focus so much on those aspects, but what we're really looking for in our yoga practice is the opportunity to integrate. Is there a settling taking place in your body? Is there a sense of comfort? I'd invite you to move out of your inversion now. If you're moving out of shoulder stand, allow for each of those vertebrae to release one by one, to iron out the spine, coming into your windscreening of the legs. And we're going to come into an upright position for some pranayama. Now, this is your practice. So if you prefer to come into Shavasana, by all means, please do so. You can practice your Nadi Shodhana, your alternate nostril breathing, in Shavasana, in corpse pose, without the use of the fingers. Now, that's quite an advanced practice, but by all means, I know students do it in my class, and they have accessed that. Otherwise, we're coming into a seated position, finding a little prop, allowing for the shoulders to rest down away from the ears. Now, within our Nadi Shodhana, we're looking for movement of the breath being directed in between each nostril. So I'd like you to acknowledge as you breathe here, whether you can sense whether one side is more prevalent than the other. Now, that might be tricky to be palpable right now, but for me, I can sense that my left side is maybe more pronounced. And just know that within the normal day, that actually your breath does move between the left and the right, depending on the activities that you're doing. So every 90 minutes or so during the day, it'll become more strong in one nostril compared to the other. Now that links in with the nadis, Ida and Pingala, spoken about within yogic literature. So as you pay attention to the position of your spine here, I'd like you to draw up through the crown of the head. The back line of the head draws back in space, believe it or not. feel into that subtle sense within. We're going to take Deer Mudra using the thumb and the ring finger to close the nostrils. If you find the arm ties, you can bring the hand to the elbow. We're going to begin by inhaling through the left nostril, closing through the right. Is that nostril clear? Are there any blockages? Is there any mucus? If there is, please get hold of a tissue. And then swapping the digits, so bringing the ring finger across the left nostril. Again, feel into whether there's any sort of mucus within the right nostril. This nostril's connected with the sun, the left with the moon. And we'll begin with the left. So closing through the right, you've got the forefinger and the middle finger either directed up at the forehead or curled in, depending on your hand. Inhale through the left side, allow for belly to relax. We're going to close left nostril, open the right, exhale, all the way to the end of the exhalation. Inhaling, take the energy up to the third eye center. Close the nostril, open, exhale, all the way to the end of the exhalation. Inhale, take your attention up to the third eye center, close nostril, exhale, inhale. Begin to slow the process of the breath down, swapping the digits. Exhale. All the way to the end of the exhalation, you might find the pause, the retention, the kumbhaka. Inhale. Up to the crown of the head. Exhale. Now I'd like you to carry on with about 10 or so of these breaths with your own breath, your own time. Inhaling. It's lovely to see someone's dog there wagging its tail. Exhale all the way to the end of the exhalation. And if you lose that count, come back to 1. This pranayama, this breath extension practice really helps to focus our minds, to move into that sense of the one pointed. Now that's really difficult if we have these thoughts, this clutteredness taking place within our psyches, swapping the digits. Exhale. Much of yoga and the pranayama practices are about that sense of one-pointedness. To move into a sense of meditation. Inhaling. Exhaling. And when we finish our Nadi Shodhana, Alum Valum, or alternate nostril breathing, we always finish on the left side. Closing right nostril, exhaling and releasing the hands. And just notice how you feel. Notice how your energy is right here and right now. Moving into the symmetrical. Now to close the practice, if you haven't already done so, come up into an easy cross-legged position. We're going to bring the hands together to create some heat. Creating some vibrational energy here, some tapas in between the hands. Some of us will need this more than others, depending on the temperature of your body and the space that you're in. Now we're going to bring the hands to the eye sockets. If you're wearing glasses, you might want to remove those now. And bring those heated palms to the eye sockets, closing the eyes. Breathing down into belly. Notice the patterns and the light dancing around the inner eye socket, the memory of light here. And then gently open the eyelids, looking into the darkness within the hands here. And then bring the palms to release. We're going to take Anjali Mudra. Bring the hands down through the midline, bowing in acknowledgement of one another and the space in between. Namaste. We take that bow deep. Thank you, everyone. It's lovely to see you this evening. Well done for making it. I'm glad we didn't have a power cut mid-session, as that was looking likely earlier.